What was the first sign that your savior was really planning your funeral? My mother had already beaten breast cancer once, so I never imagined the second time would go so differently, all because she was married now. Her new husband, Mark, was perfect. He was a financial advisor and helped her invest all the money that my father left us when he passed. He also promised to help her through cancer treatments when she got her second diagnosis, and my mother would glow up when talking about him. He stole my heart, and now he's going to save my life. I am really lucky to have him with me. I spent 1 month accompanying my mother to her radiation treatments before I had to go back to work, and as I was leaving, Mark asked me, "Do you mind signing over the power of attorney to me in case of an emergency?" Since I was leaving, I thought this was an innocent request and agreed without thinking twice. Then 2 weeks later, my mother called me. "Mark just found this amazing experimental vitamin treatment that I can sign up for." She sounded excited, but I told her to slow down. I asked if she had consulted her doctor about this, and she said yes. Of course, he agrees with Mark on everything and praises how thoughtful he is. Still, I told her to be cautious and take it slow. Over the next few days, our calls started getting shorter and shorter, which made me more and more paranoid. So I took a leave from work and drove over with her favorite homemade soup to catch up. Mark answered the door, took the soup from my hands, said thanks, and then closed the door. I stood there in shock and knocked on the door again. When he opened it, I said, "I'm here to see my mother." He replied, "Your mother is tired from the treatments and is asleep right now. Maybe you can come over some other time." I told him I'd be fine with just watching over her as she slept, but he refused to let me in. I was turning hysterical and even called the cops because I thought he was holding my mother captive. But when the officers came, he showed them a signed document from my mother that said his word was her word, and the officers literally left. Mark went back inside and closed all the curtains, but this time I didn't leave. Instead, I booked an Airbnb nearby and started stalking the house. My mother's phone was no longer ringing, and whenever I saw her come out of the house, Mark would rush her into the car and drive away. When I finally ambushed her and told her how Mark had denied me access to the house, she told me almost angrily, "Mark is only doing what's best for me. He loves me so much that he even handles all the complicated stuff himself. He probably had my best intentions in mind when he sent you away." I couldn't believe it. Mark had already poisoned my mother against me to the point where she wasn't believing her own daughter. I knew that saying anything in that situation would have the opposite effect, so I agreed with my mother and pretended to back off. But behind the scenes, I hired a private investigator and asked him to collect evidence against Mark. Turns out this monster had actually straight up canceled her treatments. The doctor he would drive her to was his college roommate who ran a phony practice as a special body therapist. I got this really bad feeling in my stomach and started thinking back to when I first met Mark. He was more excited while talking about all the holdings in my mother's name rather than their wedding. I started researching financial abuse and came across an article where someone took their spouse off life support so they could inherit a fortune, and my heart started pounding really hard. I was about to rush over there and rescue my mother at all costs, but surprisingly, she called me at that exact moment. She was sobbing and told me that she was in pain, but Mark was refusing to take her to the hospital. The call got interrupted halfway through, and I can only assume that he had snatched the phone from her. I called the cops again, and this time I wasn't empty-handed. I played the recording of the phone call I had just made and showed them the proof collected by my private investigator. They broke down the front door and found my mother ventilating on the ground. Mark panicked when he saw us and tried jumping through the window to run, but failed miserably and got hurt from the glass. My mother was rushed to the hospital, but I stayed back to watch him get arrested. He avoided eye contact with me and kept telling the cops that this was a misunderstanding, that he simply wanted the best for my mother. At that moment, I snapped and kneed him in the gut as hard as I could. He went down like a sack of grain and was hauled away. He was sentenced to 13 years in prison and another year of probation after that. My mother recovered from that incident and went on to beat cancer in spectacular fashion, after which she regained her spark and went on a 6-month world tour.